Hey, so good afternoon. Are there any, before we get started, I'm going to cover a couple of the legal Q&As that have come out, and then I will hit you for a couple of resources that are coming or that are already out there. Any questions before we get started about anything? And I know you may not even know what to ask yet. And of course, you might have questions as we chat.
Well, I had a call yesterday about land,
Yep.
and it would have been very easy for me to said, let's just run out there and see it. But even land, we have to get that agency agreement on. I am curious about what happens with that if those people have a mobile home company buy the land for them, who my client is then, but I hadn't got that far into it yet. But it did just
Yeah.
make me wonder, like, okay, who's my client now and will it change?
Yeah, so it varies with land, of course, if you're working with like the Clayton Homes or some Oakwood or some of the others. It depends on how they write their end contract. Sometimes they're going to name both parties, Clayton and the client. Sometimes there's a clause in the contract for assignability. So if the seller then, once it's under contract, then it's assignable over to Clayton on Oakwood or whomever. So it depends on how the end product is for them. Sometimes Clayton or Oakwood is the financier and they pay for it. Almost always, it winds up being a cash deal. They tend to buy the land and then roll it into one big package for the client at the end with the home and the land all as one. So it's
So
seamless for us in that we're the client for buying the land and then we're out of it. So
right, right. So basically, if it does turn into that, then I basically, like, I'm starting off with the client doing the agency agreement, but if it turns into that, just have Clayton do an agency agreement with them for this specific land
yeah, or just sign a non-exclusive with them, Clayton.
with Clayton.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
So that's the thing. We just got to get used to the forms, a 201 and a 203. And I had that verse. I was saying 301 and 303. I was thinking of 90-hour classes for PBs. So it's 201 and 203 instead. So, but yeah, and that's what we've seen. I saw a firm, someone sent me something from the weekend, a firm actually using the Zillow form. And repeatedly, over and over and over, we have said that that form is not legal in North Carolina. It does not cover you. So it has not got enough information on it. It's nice and it's handy dandy and it's one page. However, it does not cover you. So don't use that form. There could be something coming. At the moment, there's not something out there. So we're working on those things to see how and if we can make it easier for you and if we can um, condense it. There is something, it says it has to be an agreement with you and the firm. Um, and the problem is if you don't use the form that is a North Carolina form, will you be covered under E&O by using your own form or an outside form? So that's why we're being particular about this one. So, but the easy enough, an non-exclusive just means, hey, I'm showing you this house for today. If you buy it within a month, you're using me, and this is what I charge. So it's pretty straightforward, and just make sure you get a WWREA. I am going to share a screen with you to cover in some detail a little bit better. Are you all seeing navigating cooperative comp? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So this is where you can always get reliable information is ncrealtors.org. A lot of that you have to log in for. And if you just click login, it would jump to a screen that's got your state login number. And if you've forgotten what that is, of course, you just hit the button, I forgot, and they'll send you emails directly to sign in. Often this is, if you all call me, I almost immediately go here. It's not uncommon for me to go here. In the searches, you can search news, legal Q&As that come every morning. This is like all of them all the way back to like 2001 and 2 and 3 and 4 even. Any form or contract you ask me about, I go here to make sure we got the right one. And then you can just type in the search and hit click and it comes up to it. But this one was specifically referenced, navigating cooperative compensation in compliance with the license law and code of ethics. So licensing law is North Carolina Real Estate Commission, and those laws come from the state legislature. Your code of ethics is NC Realtors, and that comes from NC Realtors and NAR. So those sound the same, just understand that they're two different things. So, and this is real casual, so if y'all have a question, raise your hand, stop me, whatever. This one specifically was listed because part of the code of ethics is you shall not engage in practice or take any action inconsistent with exclusive representation or exclusive brokerage. Well, some folks have said, well, if I'm asking about their compensation on the listing agreement, am I not taking action about their representation? And you're not. And that's what this is about, is that standard of practice is not meant to impose separate rules under those articles. SOPs are standard of practice, and the controlling authority for that. However, preface, the Code of Ethics does explain the ethical principles about it. So this means that when realtors intercept at standard 1616 and read the context, it clearly prohibits interface with another member's relationship. And that what happens there is what I brought to your attention was 58A here, .0112. The broker acting as an agent in a real estate transaction shall not use a pre-printed offer. So don't show up at an appointment with a pre-printed offer, like all the boxes already filled out. That's one of the things from the lawsuit is they claimed because the agent showed up with the forms already completed that they didn't have a choice. So don't pre-fill your forms. There's some things you can pre-fill, like your name, your address, your license number, you know, your name of the brokerage. But some things you don't know yet. You don't know the marketing date. You don't know the compensation rate until you agree. So you don't show up with those things pre-filled. So that's one. So any provision concerning the payment or compensation, including forfeiture of the earnest to the broker, or provision that attempts to disclaim the liability of the broker or their representation in connection. A broker or anyone acting for at the direction shall not insert or cause such provisions to be inserted into such pre-printed forms. So don't show up with pre-printed forms. The provisions in the rule apply only to pre-printed offer and sales contract forms, which a broker acting as an agent for use by buyer and seller. Nothing contained in the rule shall be construed to prohibit the buyer and seller real estate transaction from altering or amending or deleting any provision in the form. So that's why you fill it out pre. Don't fill it out pre, other than just some basic stuff. There was also in a lot of these, if you see this, there was another bulletin that bars a broker from using pre-printed offer or sales. They already covered that one time. In the past, some brokers working with buyers would attempt to improperly force the listing firm to give them a more favorable commission split, including a commission split provision in the offer to purchase. And that's where 58A, you cannot do that. In other words, some realtors were violating standards practice 16 with a contract, which resulted in them adopting this rule. So what can you do? Prior to the offer being made, you can contact the listing agent or the unrepresented seller if it's a for sale by owner and ask whether they will offer cooperative compensation. So you can reach out. If the agent or unrepresented seller has advertised that cooperative compensation somewhere off of the MLS, you can certainly contact them to confirm the terms. That'd be social media, if you've seen anything other than MLS and showing time. If the seller or listing firm is offering cooperative compensation, you should reduce any agreement regarding cooperative compensation to writing outside of the purchase contract. So again, The purchase contract is between buyer and seller. The agents are only on there for notification, like your contact information. So that's why you're not putting compensation for an agent and a purchase between a buyer and a seller. And the new form 220, which is cooperating compensation. And somebody asked me this yesterday on the PB&J. It's a good question. If it's a for sale by owner, you're using 150. You don't use 220 on a for sale by owner. And it says that at the top of 220. Do not use this form if it's the seller's unrepresented by an agent. So
Do we even need it? Do we even need that Form 220 if, say, the seller is paying the buyer agent compensation and it happens to be exactly what we have agreed to on our buyer agency agreement with our buyer? Is that sufficient?
it's not. You need it. The reason you need it because your agreement is for your buyer to pay it. So if you're getting it from the other side, you need the 220 that says it's coming from the other side. Because the 220 then overrides your agreement with your own client of your fee.
Well, I thought the buyer agency agreement said it comes from somewhere. So now we're having to finalize and say exactly where it comes from then? Is that what you're saying?
Yep, exactly. Nail on head. Yep. So any agreement that's reached, anytime there's across the table compensation, parties need to agree on it on the 220. And everybody needs to know where it's coming from. So
all right, let me ask you this, if I may.
Yeah.
I just got a house under contract. It's a new construction. The builder doesn't have all, and so the builder does their own forms. They didn't have the 220 finalized yet, but they had some other form that said, we are indeed paying this buyer agent this percentage. And the buyer signed that. Is that sufficient for the Form 220?
It
Okay.
is. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
So any agreements reached as to cooperative compensation may be amended during the transaction if the contracting parties consent. Like you can't go under for like 3% and they agree to it, but then you ask for $10,000 for the crawl space and then they're going to drop it to 2.5. You can only do that if all the parties agree. You can't just one-sided say, well, you asked for all this, we're going to drop it. They don't work that way. If the seller or firm will not offer, here's your options. You can ask whether either or both of them will consider it. Will you offer it if they're not? Ask whether the seller will consider including a concession to the buyer in the purchase contract. And then that concession could be used in advance if we know that's where it's coming from. And basically a concession is a coupon. It's just a discount. So, the money still has to be brought to the table from the buyer. If the buyer consents in writing, you may negotiate cooperative compensation prior to submission of the offer and condition the offer submission on whether cooperative compensation can be negotiated. So this is a big one. So 58 says you can't put it in the contract. It doesn't say that you can't say, my client can't make this offer without compensation. So it's not in the contract, but it can be, you can say, just like it says, if the buyer consents in writing, you may negotiate prior to submission, not submit the offer and then talk about it, of the buyer's offer and the condition of the offer submission on whether they get compensation. So that was just basically saying, I have an offer, Mr. Seller, Miss Seller. I'd love to give it to you. My particular client is requiring compensation. So there you go. Nothing wrong with saying that. Here's a question. If we show up with a partial complete agreement, names, addresses, legal description, initial everything handwritten into the contract. Yes, that's perfectly fine. When you say all parties, do you mean all parties to the OTP? Yes. Came out, and there's another one. We're going to hit 220 right after this, and it was a recommendation to go ahead and have all parties sign. That way, you could never say, "Well, I didn't know that."
I would like some clarification on that. So you were previously saying that if there's an agreement to compensation at the beginning of the deal, and then later on there's a negotiation that might initiate the seller to say, okay, well, why don't we drop the buyer agent commission compensation? Are you saying that only the buyer and the seller have to agree to that, and it does not account for the previous document that's in place?
No, all parties. So it would be both agents as well
All
as,
parties to the 220.
yeah, all parties. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And can you talk
um,
about 5B a little bit more, please?
5B.
Yeah,
Ask
how do,
whether they'll consider including it in the purchase. Yeah. So you can always ask them if they're not offering it. You can ask them and say, would you offer a concession? A concession today is closing cost. So you say, will you give me a concession of 3%? And
but that goes to the at closing as a credit to the buyer. So how
it
does
does. And
a-
then your fee is on the closing disclosure to the buyer. So they've kind of got a coupon in a concession, just like they get a discount on closing costs today. It'll go into their cash to close. It'll negate from their total cash to close.
yeah, but that still doesn't give them money maybe that they could pay you with, or how do
Yes,
you
yes,
get,
it's not actual money. That's why I said it's kind of like a coupon. Like if I ask for closing costs today for $5,000 towards closing, that don't mean that seller handed them 5,000. It just meant that they got a coupon at closing.
okay, so the settlement
Okay.
thing is gonna basically show the buyer was credited,
Yep.
say $8,000, and
Yep.
then debited $8,000 to Keller Williams or something
Yep.
like that.
There
Got
you
it.
go. Perfect.
Thank you.
Same thing also with the loans. FHA, Freddie, and Fannie Mae and VA have all lifted their concession maximum. So if that's not like if they do a concession for compensation, that's not counting towards their 5% total of the cost. There's max limits that a seller can contribute to a purchase. If it's compensation, that does not go against that. And they've all three said that, and we've just not got it in writing yet. So because all that really starts on Saturday.
That's great. So if you do end up getting that concession, then do you do the amendment to contract? Is that where you put that agreement in?
What agreement?
The agreement of the seller paying a concession to the buyer.
Just put it on closing costs where you're doing the OTP today. It's not a different concession.
Okay. Okay, so it's not an amendment to contract. Got it.
Yeah.
So Jason, the question that I put out there is if we go to an appointment with incompleted forms and we're writing those things in, do we need to have them initial everywhere we handwrite?
No.
Okay, good.
Yeah. The only thing they need to initial if there's a change.
Okay.
But yeah, you can show up with some pre-filled stuff, like the legal description, the address, what you can't show up with. You may not know all the legal names. You need to make sure that all the names are right and spelled right before you get there. I don't know that I would show up with it that way. I would get them while I was present. Because we have had one thing show up and then like, wait, well, there's a cousin that's the heir that's on the left side of the, and then we've got to strike it out and we've got to get initials and that kind of thing. So I wouldn't necessarily put their names in it. I would put the legal description for the property, can't put in dates. You don't know if they're going to agree to a lockbox or a sign in the yard, or you don't know. So the things that they get a choice about, don't fill out first.
I mean, unless you've asked the question over the phone or previously, correct?
Bingo. Yep.
Yeah. So a follow-up on Kathy's last question, so they pay you the 8,000, or they agree to the 8,000 in concessions. Our form, so our document, our buyer agency agreement covers that as long as it's that amount.
Yeah.
And if not, then we use 770. Is that correct?
Right. if what you've agreed in the buyer's agency agreement is different than what they're offering in concession, say you write 3, but then they're going to offer 2.5, and that's what you negotiated, you would have to do a amendment to your agency to update the amount that you're accepting a lower amount.
Okay, okay.
And that's
Or
perfectly fine. That's quite all right to do that.
Can we also just scratch through where we had like 3% and change it to 2.5% on the buyer agency?
You can do an updated page 1, just like y'all upload a page 17 today when everybody signs. Perfectly fine. You can do a 770. I thought it was a 710 though, Mike. Agreement to amend agency. I think it's a 710. I could be wrong.
You're right. It is 710. My bad.
That's
Yeah.
not required if the buyer will be paying the difference, correct?
Absolutely. If the buyer's paying the difference, perfectly fine. You don't need to change a thing. And that's a conversation, just to get comfortable in having it. Say, hey, I'm going to ask for every single thing I can for you. If I can't get all of it, are you in a position to pay the difference as a part of your closing costs? And then if they can't, that's when you and the buyer negotiate on what they can or can't, the difference. But if they're going to pay the difference and it's already in your listing agency agreement, there's no need to change or update or do anything. If the seller or listing firm will not, or if an offer of compensation is not sufficient to cover the obligations under the agreement, you may submit the offer anyway and make clear to your buyer that they have to pay the fee out of their own funds. Meaning, okay, this seller of this house, if this is the one, they're not offering it. So remember our agreement that my fee is 3% because that's our office fee. And you can vary within 1 percentage point either way without permission. You say, remember, my fee was 3, they're not paying it. Are you in a position to pay it? Also, you could, at the buyer's written discretion, not submit the offer and look at other properties, or allow the buyer to terminate, and then they can make an offer themselves. And we have to kind of be willing to walk away, even if, like, the seller's not. If your business practice is to offer it to the other side, and your seller's steadfast and whatnot, and they're shooting their own foot, you have to be willing to say no sometimes. You don't know. So, as a final resort, if you want to make an offer but you can't obtain information about compensation and cooperating, even after making multiple efforts to obtain it, then you could submit your offer to the seller or the listing agent with a separate proposed agreement for compensation, unrepresented 150, 220 if it's represented. If the buyer directs you in writing, you may explain in an email or other writing that the buyer's offer is contingent on the seller or listing agent's separate agreement of property compensation. So you can submit that separately and say, this is required for this to go through. If they don't answer their phone and if they don't answer their text, and if you can't find out if they're offering. Agents are strongly recommended to consult with their BIC and legal counsel to make sure conditional language in the scenario is effective. So what you cannot do, buyer's agents and listing agents cannot put the terms of their compensation in the seller's pre-printed offer to purchase in contract. It cannot be, and I saw 2 of them last week and sent them right back. You cannot have that language in there. They wrote under additional provisions where you do the FHA and the lead-based paint and all that. In the other, they said Form 220 attached. And I'm like, no. So, all right. Buyer's agents and listing agents cannot attach any kind of addendum, including 150 or 220, to a pre-printed offer. So don't send it as the same package. Send it separately. That's why they said up here, you can send it separately and make it contingent. Once the buyer's offer is made, a listing agent may not unilaterally on one side modify that compensation. So it takes all 4 parties to agree. You can't change it after it's made. Buyer's agent may not, without the written consent of their client, condition a buyer's offer on potential agreement as cooperation. So you can't, as a buyer's agent, without the consent of your client, condition an offer on compensation. And how that's done is in the buying agency agreement already says, I'm going to go for everything I can if you want me to.
Jason, going back to attaching Form 150 or 220,
Yep.
we can attach it in the same email. We just can't make it like one long document, including like the offer and 220 or 150 all in one attachment, but we can do two attachments. Is that correct?
I would send it completely separate.
Completely separate. Okay.
And I would send it first.
Right. Yeah, I would agree with that.
And I would say, see previous email at 3:30 p.m. on 8/14 regarding in the email you send them. Because what you don't want them to do is send the whole packet back, signed, and your client's under contract, and then they didn't sign 220.
Well, I know one of the suggestions that was in the bulletin or the NC thing from this past Monday, was to send over an offer that has not been signed. If you can't get that, don't have it signed by the buyer, send everything over at once. And if they agree to it, then you can move forward and get your buyer's signature, because it's not a contract until you have every
Yep, and that's the next, we're going to hit that one next.
Okay.
So yeah, yeah, that is one. Don't fill out don't have your person initial and sign. Just send them the terms of, this is the numbers and the 220, and say, okay, within 220, then this will all be signed. Because then it's not both parties signed and under contract. Where was I? Here it was. Okay. If the buyer cannot pay the agent or their own funds, then the buyer agent and the buyer may discuss the terms on which the agency may be terminated. To prevent this scenario, however, buyer agent must have thorough discussions with their clients prior to signing buyer agency, and certainly prior to signing a 2T. So, does this help? Yes, no, maybe.
Yes, that's good.
I love y'all. Okay, let me stop share on that one, and let me pull up the other one I wanted to cover with you. Okay, are y'all seeing best practices for cooperating compensation 220?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So, and I posted this on Facebook. Anytime I see one, I put them in there on Mondays about noon. So I keep hearing conflicting information about the form. Sure. So here we go. Does the buyer agent or the listing agent need to fill it out, or can either one fill it out? Yes. Either one can fill it out and send it to the other side. So it doesn't matter who sends it. Either party can fill it out and send. Is it required? No, it's technically not required. Form 220 is a tool to help agents create a written confirmation of compensation. So this is just a legal document that says these two parties are going to pay, and between who's getting paid, agents and agents.
But didn't we talk about that a while ago, that you were saying we do have to have something in writing that says where it's coming from?
Yes, that's BIC rule. Is this a required form? No. Can I fight for you to get it if they refuse to pay it and you don't have this form? No, it's gonna make it tough. So like on your new build, you're not going to have 220. You have that other form. So 220 is not required on that new build, but you do have something signed by all parties from the builder saying they are going to pay this agent. So is the actual form required? But something's got to be in writing that says exchange of payments happening. I don't know that I would create my own. I would just use the one this one's covered by our insurance. So. When should I check the seller box? This came up in class and forms. I think Alice Boyle asked this. So whoever is paying the cooperative compensation should be checked in paragraph 1. For example, if the seller has authorized compensation in a listing agreement, then the listing firm box should be checked. This is because the compensation will be paid from the proceeds the seller is paying the listing firm. So if the firm is 6% and then they are sharing, then you check listing firm. So if the seller did not authorize compensation in the listing agreement, but then later agrees to pay it, then you say the seller is paying. And that's the box you check. Because these two scenarios are differentiations from the original listing agreement. That's why which box is checked when. So if they agree up front, it comes from the firm. If they don't agree, but then accept the contract with it, you check the seller box. Should I have the seller sign the Form 220 at the listing appointment? So this is up to the firm's policy. To me, to me, it's no different than having an RPD or MOG signed and ready to go if they're offering it. So you're just saving yourself time and frustration later on. And to me, this is Jason saying this, I would have it signed. If they're offering it, go ahead and get it filled out.
And Jason, it seems like that would be more clear too as to who's paying it, whether it's the seller or the firm.
Yep.
If the firm is the one that has that signed at the time of listing, right?
Yep. It would be, yeah. So if the seller agrees that, okay, 6%, we're going to share whatever percent, then just 220 solidifies that. And this is what we send to the other party for the attorneys to know that this is verified by all parties. So I would have it done at listing appointment. Now, I wouldn't send it like if every single person there's all this talk and hype about, well, when do I send it or who gets it? Do I send it every appointment? Do I send, it's up to you. If I have 100 appointments and I'm sending it to 100 agents and I only get 3 offers, I've wasted my time. If I get feedback from showing time, I have 100 appointments and 5 of them say they're sending offers, then I would send a separate email with 220, not the showing time email and hit reply, but send the 220 to those 5 that said they will. That to me is not a waste of time. So, but yes, sending it to 100, I think, is a waste of time. All right. Can I attach it to a purchase? Absolutely not. No, no, no. It clearly prohibits that being attached and otherwise included in a purchase contract. So, and that's why when you ask, I say you don't include it, even with the email, so it's not even implied. Send it separately. If you send it separately, there's no doubt. You could reference it in your email to the agent that says, I emailed you a 220 form at this time previously. So if a seller has authorized cooperative compensation, can I publish it on the firm's website? So yes, on the firm's website, you can. KW is working on some kind of master plan for us to post things. We do have a short-term fix in the works right now that I'll show you if we got time. So again, each firm can make its own policy on this issue. We have written that publishing the Form 220 is already signed may have risk. So I don't know that I would publish a 220 period, and it tells you why later on. So what is the risk of publishing a 220 publicly? Well, the main risk is that a buyer may have multiple buyer agents that signed a non-exclusive agreement. So paragraph 2 of the 220 says that the cooperative compensation is being earned when the buyer and seller sign. So I wouldn't put it out there as a whole. So if a buyer with 2 buyer agents signs a purchase contract, then both agents have obtained pre-signed 220s. So it just opens you up if you already have it out there posted. So, the easiest way to avoid this risk is to publish 220 without a signature from the seller or listing firm. However, the listing firms are free to consult with their own legal counsel. So, when should I negotiate cooperative compensation? If at all possible, cooperative compensation should be prior to the buyer's offer. So this happened over the weekend. We had an agent in town that said, we're accepting offers, and then based upon the offers we receive, we'll decide if we're going to offer compensation. So technically, that's not wrong. Now, I would say that conversation's already happened at the listing appointment. and that person signed the listing agreement about compensation. So unless they signed it without compensation, I don't know how the agent's doing that to look at offers and decide. So if then Mike sent one for 2.5 and Kim sent one for 2, well, Kim's looks better because it's lower. But if I sign a listing agreement offering 3, then all of those are wrong. So to me, that's risky. The other thing I think is a little bit asinine from that particular agent, they have buyer's agents on their team. So they're, in essence, negatively negotiating their own teammates' compensation. Is that a way to say that? Did that make sense?
Yeah, I was on a Triangle Town Hall probably a month ago. Yeah, at least a month ago, maybe 6 weeks. And they were talking about that Form 220, and whoever it was that was speaking basically said, hey, buyer agents, keep in mind a listing agreement can be altered at any time. So just because you saw in MLS back when they put the percentage there for buyer agents was there, it doesn't mean it's still there. He said it can be changed. All the better reason to get that compensation arranged with your agent, with your buyer, and with that listing agent, and get 220 signed before you do that offer, because something could change. I'd never thought about changing the compensation part of a listing agreement, though.
You can before a contract.
Before receiving a contract?
Not receiving it, but before you sign one. Like if all parties sign a contract and then I want to go back and change it, y'all do that with me today. You say, oh, we're at closing table, they need $1,000. Can I kick it in from my side? Well, you just changed the listing agreement compensation. So it's just another way of looking at it. But yes, you do that today. The issue is we've not gone back and said, fill out the form that says you changed it. Like we are now. So yeah, you can, once it's out to the public, like you can't put out there 2.5 and then say, no, we're not doing 2.5, we're doing 2, unless all four parties agree. You can't unilaterally change something. You can keep their side the same and drop yours, like you do today when you call me and ask for $500 to pay for or whatever, or y'all ask me this all the time, and I have to send a letter to the lender and I have to send a letter to the attorney. That's that you can change your part on your side. You can't change what you put outwardly to the other side. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, have to hold up for your side of the bargain. When cooperative compensation negotiated the buyer's offer, if the listing is not advertised it, buyer agent should contact the firm or the agent directly. The listing firm may request that the buyer agent at least communicate what the buyer's proposed offer terms are so that the seller can make an informed decision. A listing firm may also inquire what the buyer's compensation request is or what the buyer's agreed to pay. BAs can then decide what information they're willing to share, if any. And again, we talk about code of ethics. If this is not breaking your code of ethics, like confidentiality. If you share that this is what we're willing to do and your client says it's okay for you to share that, you can. You're not breaking any rules or regs there for fiduciary. So what if Form 220 is signed, but then the buyer and seller never go under contract? Does the listing firm have to pay? No, because that paragraph in 220 says it's only earned if the buyer and seller sign a purchase contract. So if it's not signed, if they don't go under contract and it is signed, no big whoop because it cancels it. So. And yeah, another thing, y'all are not putting an expiration date. The ones I have seen turned in, that there's been a blank date here. What you put in is the expiration date of your agency agreement or the date that it expires in. The MLS has an expiration date, listing expiration date at the bottom. You either put their expiration or you put in yours from your agency agreement with my side.
Okay.
There's no rule regarding the date in paragraph 3. It can be as long as short as parties wish. My recommendation is whatever you do, you can't leave it blank. You got to put something.
But you can put the date that you think the transaction will have closed as well, right?
You
Yeah.
can. That's fine. Yeah.
Okay.
Or 7 days afterwards in case something happens and you have 7 days. So, what if a listing firm will not communicate? How can I submit an offer if my buyer needs it? As we said in this Q&A before, which was written after consulting with Regulatory Affairs, you might consider as a final resort submitting the offer separate proposed Form 220. For example, you could email the buyer's offer to the listing in the email and contract and Form 220 are both attached to the email, which scares me to death. Don't do that. But as separate documents, I would recommend strongly you send them completely separate. If the buyer directs you in writing, you may explain in the email or other writing that the buyer's offer is contingent on that listing agent separate agreement as cooperative compensation. What I would do then is not have your buyer client sign the offer to purchase. Like Mike mentioned earlier, send it without signatures, because once you send it over, you're saying 220, here's the offer. And once they sign, if they sign it and send it back, then your buyer signs it. Because then you're under contract. It takes both parties to go under contract. So. All right, what if I send it conditional and the listing agent 220 is attached as separate, and the seller only signs the purchase contract and sends back? If you're sending 2T and Form 20 at the same time, consider sending the purchase contract to the listing firm unsigned to reduce risk. So we kind of just hit on that. Are there any plans to change the law? Nope. I can answer that real quick. They're not looking at changing the law. So. All right, I got a question. Would we take into account the protection period? Yes, I would, Sarah. Yes, I would. Or, do a 6-month date, or do, the date doesn't matter. You just have to have one. We can't have any signed agreements without a start and a stop. That's what makes them effective. So, all right. So that is that. How you feeling? Better? Better?
I like Sarah's face.
You're so funny, Jason.
I do want to share one more thing with you that Daniel and I created. Now we are working on this. It's not forward facing yet. It is something I think we've got approval on, and it's a centralized location that you as an agent can look up the compensations for our firm in one central location. So this is not out there yet 100%. We've been testing it and trial running it and all kinds of stuff, but please, I'll give you a sneak peek. I gave the newbies that yesterday, and I'll offer the same to you. Okay. Let me screen share this because I love you. Okay, y'all should be looking at my email from Daniel. Good? Okay. So to submit it, you would just fill out a Google form. So this is what the Google form is going to look like, really simple. So is it active? What address is it? Are you offering compensation? The agent phone, agent email, and a link, not your MLS link. We suggest your KW site link and anything else you might want us to know. Okay? So that's that. Did y'all go back to my email, I hope? Yes? Okay. So once you fill out the form, then it goes to this. So what you keyed in goes to a master spreadsheet that you as an agent within KW, even if you were like on front desk duty, and someone called and can't get a hold of Jason because he don't answer his phone, you're like, look, I've called Jason 50 times. I need to know what 123 Test Street's doing. You could control F this and find 123 Test Street is offering 2.5. And there you go. So we've been testing it to see if it'll work. And we're really close. And Daniel's on vacation is probably the only reason we hadn't launched it. Where it's going to be housed, are y'all got questions about this? Are y'all good? This makes sense? We're trying to help you. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go back and close it out once it closes, or because the spreadsheet can live in infinity. It's fine. You just do the Control F to find it. So the third one is doing a landing page to get to it from KW Central. So this is our KW Central home page. And then it would look like this. So if you wanted to, as an agent, go out there and look for yourself, click link and it should take you to that form already from our homepage at kwcentral.com. And it's probably going to agent resources, I think. We haven't decided 100%. That's the final piece. Where's it going to go? So this is a test screen that y'all don't have access to yet. We're trying to decide where to put it. So not a requirement that you have to put it in there. I would just say the ones that are signed and offering compensation, this may be a centralized location that you could put it to help everyone. So
Jason,
how do you feel about that one?
well, is it going to be updated periodically, or is it like when they close, are they going to come off that list, or how does that?
Yeah, you don't have to. I mean, it doesn't have to come off. We could add it. That's our next conversation when they get back from Texas. And as part of the closing file, does compliance take it off, or do you as the agent, as part of your closing checklist, it's got to be removed as a required step for you. At this point, it doesn't matter if you take it off or not, because once it's closed, so there's nothing to offer. So that's kind of the last steps of us getting this solved. But again, this is something we're working on to help. So
Why the link to the listing?
in case you're on the phone at the front desk and somebody asks you a question, so you don't have to then log into the MLS to then look up, is it 3-bedroom, 2-bath, 100 square feet? I mean, all that stuff. Just to make it easy. So. All right.
Is that
You got 7 minutes. Ask me anything.
You could be on agent on duty, get a
Yep.
call from another agent.
Yep.
Asking about someone else's listing if it offers. Now, are we going to answer those questions if we look at that spreadsheet?
Yes.
We refer them to the agent.
You would answer it because the agent's the one that keyed that in.
Okay.
And the firm is the one offering it because it's a firm agreement that the seller signs that then the agent entered as part of their listing package.
Yes.
Good question. Yes, Sarah.
I have an entity and I'm trying to get to the point where my entity pays me a W-2. Could you tell me what I need to do with my entity to make sure that's set up appropriately?
Sort of not really, because I'm not an attorney. I can tell you the steps. One, you have to get a firm license if you've not gotten one. That's $45 a year, just like your regular firm license. And you go to NC Rec, just like you sign in today, and one of those options is to apply. And then you renew it every year, just like you do any other license.
If I'm just doing it for the payment part,
yeah, you have to have a firm license because a firm is not allowed, you're not allowed to do payments from a firm without a license in North Carolina. So if it's, so here, when I log in, I would log in as firm, like I log in as 21388, instead of my licensee when I log in. And then under forms, one of the forms is application forms, and you can apply for a firm application right there. It's Real Estate Commission 1.72 right there. So
Okay.
they will ask when you log in, they will ask, like if you're not, you don't have one, so you can register. They will ask for a BIC, and if you're just doing it for payment alone to yourself, you don't have to you can name yourself as BIC, even though you're not BIC eligible, because you're not advertising that to the public. You're only using it for pay through pass purposes. So you can name yourself. It asks you if that's what you're doing. But if you're going to say Montrose Homes to the public, and Montrose Homes is the one paying you, you do have to have a BIC named. And then they'll ask for your documentation where you created the actual entity.
Okay.
So,
Thank
yeah. Anything else? Oh, big, huge, fat thing I forgot to share. Oh my God. Oh my God. I need your help. Compliance needs your help. You're making us want to drink alcohol. Really bad. I need your help, and if y'all would help train this. And okay, I wish I could straight out these names, but I can't. So, y'all should be looking at my KW command. Okay, and this is what we do in compliance. So this is command where y'all go. I go here. I look at opportunities just like you look at opportunities. So today there are 14 requests for us to approve something. I need you to do me a favor. And you see this automatically sorts by closing date. So the very first one, not to pick on any name, forget the names that are in here. This one should have closed in March of 24. It's a build, so we know what's going on with it. The next, it's in sequential order by estimated closing date. The system does that, not us. It's just the way it operates. What we need your help with is making sure you enter a number in there, in the details of and I'll show you how. Details, you need to enter an estimated closing date. Now, you don't know what that is until you get a contract, right? So y'all are doing really well about putting your closing date in there, not your estimated closing date. So if you see, this is 8/1, 8/20, 8/26, 8/26, 8/30. They're in sequential order, right? So when we go into compliance and look for something, we're looking for the one that's closing the soonest first, because those are the ones that are usually wanting to check. Well, I'm looking, as I look over here, here's somebody that's working on a closing file for October, right? So if you don't have a date in here, it automatically kicks you to the end. So we've already got okay, Sam, here's a good. Joe Bakers, don't have a date, but he submitted closing. So he's all the way behind something in October for us to approve because there's not a date in there. Not picking on Joe, so please don't take it that way. That's not what I'm saying. This is a training piece that we all need to do better. Once you get a contract, let's go in and update that. How you update it, and we'll do Sandy as an example. This particular one, as I'm showing you. Oh, come on, command. All right. So this under contract, once you get an actual contract, your estimated closing date, let's see what it is. She didn't have one in there. So see, she's got one over here on the right for 8/21, but that's the one she put her closing date as the date, not estimated. So her estimated closing date is probably 8/22 on the contract. Oh, look, 8/22. So me as a compliance, I'm physically having to go back into details for every single agent in the entire office that submits something. Click details, click this little pin under key dates. Estimated closing date right there. I need you to put your date in that box. Because now, you remember she was all the way behind the October one, right? So when I save this, and then if I go back into opportunities, and then I get, look, 3 people have submitted stuff while we've been talking. So then when I go back, now Sandy's in order of 8/22 because we got the date. And I'll look at this file quicker than I'll look at a file that is in October or one that doesn't have a date, Robbie Cavender. So he's got a contract with no estimated date. So I need your help instead of me and the compliance team having to look at 180 agents and us going to details and looking at, we got to get the date, go to details, upload it, save it, rank it. Like, yeah, I need your help. Y'all could just click that when you submit it or when you
So
get it.
Jason, so we're working with a buyer. We don't have anything under contract. And he
Yep.
does ask for an estimated closing date at the time of putting that in as an opportunity. So
Right.
do we put that date out 90
After
days?
you get an OTP signed.
After we get it, okay.
Yeah, we don't need it till you get an OT. It's fine. Like you'll see some of these at the end down here. Like Margaret's, I don't know what her date is. She does have a contract. Here's one for Sade. She doesn't have a contract at the moment,
Gotcha.
so I'm not looking for a date. I'm looking for her to be at the end automatically. So she's not, none of her paperwork is pending like urgent.
And then
Now this one
estimated-
might be urgent if I go in and look at a date.
And then that estimated closing date would be the date that's in the contract
Yes,
of settlement.
yes.
Okay,
So see, like all these are kicked to the end.
Yep.
And they all, 3 of the 4 have contracts. So if I've got 45 to look at today, I'll tell you in June we had like 130. And if you don't have a date in there and your date is urgent, like you're kicked to the back. And I don't know it's urgent without you telling me. Now, what I will do is scroll through to look over here to see, wait, this one's fine without a date. There's not a contract. Wait, this one has a contract. I need to find the date because this one might be need to be moved up. But again, me doing it for 180 people is time consuming. If y'all could help out once you get a contract, just go to details, click the pin, put in the date from the contract. Y'all would, it would be massive time consuming, less on the compliance team. Like that would be uber important if y'all could help with that. So, and train your friends. If y'all do that in coaching, Mike, it's something I brought up in the management meeting. It's something we'll do at the next team meeting. Like we're going to put it out. But I do want, if y'all can start, that would be a huge help.
Question about that. Usually my practice, once I get something under a contract, just go ahead and work on that commission submission.
Yeah.
And put the close date there. So does it populate to where you're wanting it to be?
Nope.
It does not populate.
Because it needs the estimated, and when you put it in the commission, it's putting in the date, your closing date. So the one that ranks it is estimated.
Estimated over real.
Yep. And again, you just saw in real time files that have contracts that are kicked all the way after October
Mhm.
because they don't have a date. No, I mean, and this is a training piece. It's not to call out anybody or complain about anybody. It's just something you all didn't know that we were going through in compliance that we need your help with. So,
well, and it could delay our getting compensated, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
that could be one of those points.
because one of the rules is you get me documents within 3 days, and I'm seeing whole files the day they upload chat.
Yeah.
And so then we're looking at 100 pages of piece of paper while you're standing there like Bugs Bunny with your hands on your hips, patting your foot, waiting for us to finish. And it's like, I mean, you're in the back. I don't have a date. I mean, I'm not looking at that. I'm looking at the ones that have dates that are urgent. So,
Let me ask you this question about populate. When I create an opportunity, I'm going in and estimating closing date. Is that the spot? Is that where that information is coming from anyway?
It
Okay.
does. It'll populate. Yes, it will populate if you do it when you create the opportunity. If you already know, about when it's going to close.
Oh, okay, because that's where it's coming from then.
And it's not holding in it. I mean, if the date's not right, it's not the end of the world. You can
Right.
always change it, you can update it. It doesn't affect your money, anything else. What it does, it feeds money, the financials to the office based upon what we think is closing that month and what amount of money is coming from this contract to the office. And then it also ranks it in order of importance for compliance. So that's what it does.
Thank you.
No, thank you. You have no idea. Spread the word to all your fellow cohorts. We would love it. All right. I've gone over a tad. What do you need anything from me?
No, thank you for this.
We're giving you a one-pager that I'm coming out with today. Several people have asked. I'm working on it. Triangle had not officially agreed on their fees and suspensions. So I'm giving you a one-pager for reference to everybody in the office to hopefully help you some in case you have a moment lapse and you're like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? Like, just so you know. If you did not catch, this is a conversation for another time, your email from Triangle yesterday, you do need to read that. Starting 2025, which will go into effect for 2026, there will be an option to join Triangle as not an association member. Now, what that's going to look like, we don't know yet. It's July of 25 that's not even going to be implemented and an option, but then it won't even be until 26 that it goes into effect. Whatever your BIC does, you will have to follow. So if I'm a member, you'll have to be a member. But think about if you're not a member, you don't get forms, you don't get RPR, you don't get showing time, you don't get legal hotline, you don't get tech line, you can't call yourself a realtor, you would call yourself a licensed agent. Like there's a whole lot that goes into that it might save you $400 over the year, but one call to legal hotline can save you $400, in my opinion. However, there are lawsuits out there right now, happened in Michigan 2 days ago, that the MLS, the association were all sued because they were forcing people to join the association to get to the MLS. Now, I feel there is value in the association, and we'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but read that communication that came out yesterday. Know that there's a party of about 20 folks that are from Durham, Raleigh, Johnson County, Orange County, Alamance. There's 5 of us. There's a board of 5 people that are working on this over the next year. But that communication did go out yesterday. I'll hit it in the team meeting so people aren't shocked and floored. But again, the option will be there for you not to join the association. But again, what is that going to look like if you're not a member?
Jason, just for clarity, if we don't, so as a member of BayCar, that covers that membership. Is that correct or no?
It does, yeah.
Okay. You just have to be a member of an association to get those benefits.
Correct.
Okay.
And what would happen then, the fee is going to be higher than $150 a quarter for those folks. Because one, they're going to have to get some kind of form to write contracts. They're going to have to get some kind of access to houses. So they have to have some kind of lockbox access. They're going to have some kind of insurance other than E&O that we carry, because our E&O covers state forms, not your own forms that are out there. So there's a lot to unpack. to save you $400. But again, how much more of an expense is it going to be? We don't know yet. It will be more than 150 a quarter. I can tell you that. I know that's happening. So,
Okay, thank you, Jason.
Yep. I appreciate you all so much. Thanks for joining, and I look forward to next Wednesday with you.
Thank you. Y'all have a good week.
Bye.
Bye.